Hello, we're at DCD Southeast Asia and I'm talking to Ed Ansett, who's just given one of the standout presentations of the conference. Your presentation was about rounding up a handful of serious data center failures and talking about the messages that came from that.
Yes.
And to sum up what I understood from that, the data center industry is inevitably going to have failures from time to time whenever multiple causes conspire to happen and human error is in the mix as well.
Right.
You had a word for what a data center is.
It's not my word. It's called a homotechnical system, which means it's basically a combined system of people and technology. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, people tend to think of a data center as a technology system, which is really the wrong way of looking at it. To understand it properly, you've got to look at the people behind the data center operations, behind the data center design, testing, commissioning, as well as the technology within it, because they come together as a single system.
Mm-hmm. And looked at in context with other similar systems like nuclear power stations, the airline industry, all credit to the data center people for the levels of reliability they are achieving. It could be a lot better. The number of hours between failures in our industry compared with those other industries is still too low. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's no definitive study on this, but it's pretty obvious that despite all the efforts, you still see a remarkably high number of failures in resilient systems, whether that's failure in terms of application failure invoking DR, whether that's facilities failure, whether that's almost any type of failure. We see a disproportionately high number in our industry, more than we should do if we were at a stage where we were, let's say, 5 years, 6 to 10 years more mature. And the reason for that is, well, one of the main reasons for that is to do with the fact that we're not good at sharing information. The only way we can understand things is by learning from either our own mistakes or other people's mistakes, and obviously preferably other people's mistakes. But because all of these incidents are shrouded in secrecy, and there's a reason for that. People that have problems don't want to talk about them and share them because it's embarrassing, and quite frankly, they wish they hadn't happened and they want them dealt with. And they're dealt with internally. That's fine, but then other people don't get to benefit from understanding what went wrong. So what happens is you see a pattern of errors repeated all over the place, all over the globe, mm-hmm. because people are unaware of failures that other people have had that they could have avoided. Simple things.
Yes. So, for instance, a recent major failure that happened, it was completely unexpected to them. They had no way of predicting it would happen. But when you heard about it, you were able to say, of course, this has happened before.
Yes, I suppose it's a bit like this. It's that learning experience thing, isn't it? Because you've seen the problem before, it's relatively easy for you to diagnose it because you have the experience. But if you don't share information, which I would say most people hadn't seen that failure before. Certainly, if you're not working in a specialised field, then most people wouldn't have seen that failure before.
Okay, and data center operators who experience failures don't share the details of them because there's no regulatory body, no central regulation forcing them to do so.
Well, that's one reason, isn't it? The other one is that these things are embarrassing. When things happen, there are losses. Usually there's financial losses. There are obvious. Mm-hmm. There's reputational losses. It's a bad thing. And the less said, the better. Mm-hmm. We want to move on. We want to find out what's wrong, fix our problems, and move on to the next. Mm-hmm. But because of that very fact that they are not shared, that means that clearly other people aren't benefiting from that knowledge. Mm-hmm. Now, we can't turn around for every forensic analysis we do, every failure analysis we do, and share that with the industry. Today was a bit of an exception because we managed to make the failure scenarios anonymous, Those people that were involved in those failures certainly knew which data centers we were talking about, the people that were present. But generally speaking, the idea was, to stay within the bounds of the non-disclosure agreements, but to share with people. But with a lot more than that. It shouldn't be about me and doing a presentation and sharing these failure scenarios. There's far more. I mean, this is a huge. There's a huge effort that needs to be made if anyone wants to make it. And frankly, I hadn't mentioned this, but something that I'm very keen to say is that we, in the near future, are going to start pooling as much as we possibly can data from organisations in terms of failures, and instead of just kind of keeping that to ourselves, we want to get that out there and sort of help people. But that's only one organisation. We need a really big concerted effort by the industry if we're going to really make a difference.
Yes, and it's possible in future that the industry will have a situation. We will eventually have to share things.
I think so. I think.
Can you tell us what will bring that on?
Well, that's the interesting thing. So first of all, no, I can't. But let's look at the sort of trend. Okay, there's one thing I'm minded of. I was just thinking the other day is that when I started out my career, my job didn't even exist. My profession didn't exist. So then you start thinking, well, if you look at our industry and the technology industry and how that has evolved, and then look at society's dependence on technology, which is growing more and more. The obvious things that spring to mind are the sort of day-to-day interaction that people have on social media and stuff like that. My sense of it is that our dependence on technology is going to increase, not decrease. Now, what that probably means, and I can't tell you why, because I'm just not that, I'm not kind of visionary, but
yes.
I'm pretty sure that there will come a time when it will be necessary not just to regulate in the way that they do at the moment in terms of financial services and safety, but to have something specific to the data center industry. Almost 100% certain.
Yes, I mean the airlines have very public procedures reporting and analysing failures because lives are at stake.
Yes. And
that situation will eventually be the case for data centers.
Well, now you're pressing me on the point, aren't you? I think so, but I can't back that up. All I can see is this kind of gradual increase in our dependence on technology and where that's going to take us. But somebody else out there can say what
it's
that's
statistical. We don't know what failures will happen.
Yeah,
excellent.
Right.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.